Welcome everyone to our the third part of our webinar series on conservation technology for Caribbean civil society organizations. This webinar will be on using technology to support citizen science, Bioblitz and iNaturalist, and the presenter will be Dr. Amy Deacon. So just to quickly go over the agenda, what we have planned for today, welcome and introductions. The presentation, we will hopefully have some time in the chat as we go along. And then hopefully we'll be able to close right on time for 2 p.m. We do have some polls that you all may see coming up during the presentation. So we ask if you all could kindly participate in those polls to help us gather feedback. Yeah. So introductions. My name is Nikita. I'm a project officer at the Cropper Foundation, and we are implementing this project, which is being funded by the CEPF, which is the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund. The name of the project is a preparatory grant to support integration of data science and technology in Caribbean conservation efforts by civil society. A little bit about the Cropper Foundation. For those of you all who aren't that familiar with us, we are ourselves a civil society organization. We're located in Trinidad and Tobago, and a lot of what we focus on is around the field of sustainable development. We have different core program areas such as natural resource governance, arts for development, resilience, etc. And we are in our 25th year. Yeah, this year was our 25th anniversary. Right, so a little bit more about the project. As I mentioned, this project examines the use of new and emerging data science and technologies, specifically with respect to conservation-based organizations throughout the Caribbean region. And the target countries under this project were Jamaica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. We conducted in-person workshops at those countries and other project activities. So this webinar series is one of the activities under this wider CEPF-funded project. And a little bit about our presenter today. Dr. Amy Deacon is a senior lecturer in zoology at the University of the West Indies, and she's originally from the UK, but she's been here in Trinidad and Tobago for more than 15 years. So she's pretty much a Trini at this point. Her research really relates to freshwater biodiversity, but she's also interested in neotropical biodiversity, natural history, and she's an active member of the Trinidad and Tobago Field Naturalist Club. She's a scientific coordinator for the annual Bioblitz, which is what she'll be presenting on today, which is co-organized by the University of the West Indies and the TT since 2012. And sorry, she's the scientific coordinator since 2012. So I'm gonna, no, not yet. I'm gonna hand over to Dr. Deacon. You can go ahead and share your screen now. And as I mentioned before, any questions, any need for tech support, just put it in the chats. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great, thanks very much for the introduction, Nikita. I hope everyone can hear me and see my screen.
Yes.
So I just had a quick look at the participants in this webinar, and it seems like quite a few of you are familiar with Bioblitz and probably with iNaturalist too, but I'm not going to assume that of everybody. So here I'm going to be introducing Bioblitz and iNaturalist and how we use the two together to generate biodiversity data that's useful for the country and for the region. So I'm going to start off by sharing this short video for those who aren't so familiar with what a Bioblitz is. This was created after our very first Bioblitz in 2012 by Mike Rutherford. So I'm just going to play this for you now. Great. So hopefully that gave those of you who don't know much about Bioblitz a little taste of what it involves. And those of you who are very familiar with Bioblitz, that was a trip down memory lane from 2012. So I want to just set this in context by talking about the data gaps that we have for biodiversity. We really need data on biodiversity, our species, if we're going to effectively manage and conserve it. But the tropics, including the Caribbean, have historically been less well studied than, say, North America and Europe, and generally have been consistently underfunded, under-resourced for monitoring and researching their own biodiversity. So how can we help to fill this gap? And there are lots of different ways we can do this, including digitizing data that we already have. We have museums full of specimens that is not very easily accessible. And we've been doing some projects at the university to try and digitize and make those specimens more accessible and available to everybody online by publishing them into databases. We can also do scientific field surveys, which is the other part of my job, where I go out to rivers, for example, to survey fishes in a systematic way in order to produce scientific research on particular taxa or habitats. And that generates data. But also we can use citizen science efforts to help fill those data gaps. And citizen science is effectively some kind of collaboration between scientists and non-scientists involving the collection or analysis of data. You might also see the term participatory or community, because of course, you don't have to be a citizen as such, but it's involving non-scientists, non-experts in data collection. So it has diverse ways in which citizen science can form. But today, I'm going to introduce Bioblitz as one of these citizen science events that can engage communities while also generating useful biodiversity data. I'm also going to introduce the free app iNaturalist and then explore iNaturalist as a tool to enhance the value of a Bioblitz. This could be applied to any other citizen science event as well. So let's start with the first one, introducing Bioblitz. So the video gave you a starting taster of that. But a Bioblitz is an intense biodiversity survey of a particular area for a set amount of time. It brings together experts and non-experts in this activity of biodiversity surveying. The first one, I believe, occurred in 1996 in the USA, but now they are found worldwide. And as mentioned before, the first one in Trinidad was the one we just saw the video of in 2012. Really, the big question that any Bioblitz is asking is how many species can we find together as the whole community of volunteers and experts within that place and time? And there are two main kind of outputs or purposes of a Bioblitz. One is to collect the data to fill that data gap. We can get data on the distributions of species, the status of certain species of interest, such as endemics or invasive species, but also to engage communities with their local biodiversity. And this can also lead to more effective conservation, because once we appreciate and understand things, we're more likely to protect them. So those two very much come in hand. Now, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have had events annually since 2012. The first event was established by Mike Rutherford, who's in this picture here, who was the curator of the Zoology Museum here at UWI and a member of the Field Naturalist Club at the time. So he had heard about Bioblitzes elsewhere and decided that it was really needed, would be a great venue to start running them in Trinidad and Tobago. So we all thank Mike for establishing this and getting us started with Bioblitz. And we've managed to have an event every single year since then. So that's 14 events in total. And here's a nice map. Thanks to Dr. Linton Arno for producing this map for us, just showing where those in-person Bioblitzes happened. You'll notice these don't add up to 14, and that's because of the virtual Bioblitzes, which I'm going to talk about a bit later. So we've had these events that have spread over the two islands in a different habitat each year. And what kind of species counts are we getting? Well, here's a little summary of the species counts. We started off with 685 in Taco Valley in 2012 and sort of had ups and downs since then. Charlotte had been involved in a lot of marine habitats, so we saw a higher total. But you'll see we're always above 600 and often skirting around the 1,000 mark. I'm going to hold back on the Maracas total because we'll have a final reveal of that if you hold on till the end of the talk. I wanted to talk through how we actually organise a BioBlitz in case some of you are interested in whether this is something that you might like to initiate in your country, on your island or in your region, and whether or a similar concept might also be applicable. So when we're organising a BioBlitz, it starts off with a partnership, in our case, between the university and the Trinidad and Tobago Field Naturalist Club. These two organisations provide a great deal of in-kind support. They receive the funds when we receive any sponsorship. They provide equipment in the case of the university, and general promotion, support, etc. for the event to happen. So this is a really nice combination of these this organisation, the Field Naturalist Club, which is full of nature enthusiasts from all walks of life and all professions, but with this passion for nature. And then the university, where we have staff who some of them might be experts in certain areas, but we also have students who are learning and wish to gain experience in the field. We then have an organising committee who are concerned with actually organising the event, the logistics, coordinating, acquiring the funding, doing the social media, the outreach, and dealing with the data as well. And members of this committee are typically either or both associated with the university and or the Field Naturalist Club. To get funding, we submit proposals, and we also apply for some non-financial donations like snacks and things for the day itself. And we've been lucky to receive funding from First Citizens for many of the years that we've been running, including this year. We then have team leaders who are local experts, not necessarily academics, but people who have expertise in these different areas for the country. And so these individuals take on the role of coordinating the surveys during BioBlitz for their particular taxa. And then volunteers with less experience have that leadership and a bit of organisation about where they're going to go and how they're going to approach the surveys. And then we have volunteers who can be anybody. We're completely open to people without any experience at all. Might be biology students, might be secondary school classes with their teachers, members of the community where we are holding the BioBlitz, members of the Field Naturalist Club, and of course staff and students of the university. So it really is very broad. We advertise widely and people can register to take part. We always have a base camp ever since the very first event where you saw that marquee at Tucker Valley. These days we try and find a local school or community centre so we have some decent facilities, and we can literally camp there, but also use that as the base to bring back specimens, keep any equipment, and do the start and the end announcements of the event. And then of course every year we're faced with the decision of, well, when and where are we going to hold the event? And there are a few different considerations when you're choosing a site for BioBlitz. I won't pretend we do this in a very scientific way, but we consider all of these different things when we're deciding. We like, as you can see from the map, we try to spread out the events so that we're covering different parts of the country over time. Each time we do a 5-kilometre radius, but we vary exactly where that would be. Sometimes we choose an area because we believe it's worth it. We need to document the biodiversity there because it's an area particularly vulnerable to development. Sometimes it's an area that we know has some unique ecosystems and perhaps unique species, so we want to target it. Some places are easier to engage with communities than others, and that can be a definite plus to choosing that place. Some places, like especially in Trinidad, for example, in the South Trinidad, so many places have not been studied well at all, so there's more opportunities to document new things there. And related to that is habitat variety, choosing a 5-kilometre area that captures different habitats within that 5K, like some marine habitats and freshwater habitats, mountainous habitats, forest habitats, is a great plus to all of the teams being able to find more species. And a typical BioBlitz, this is how it would normally work. We would, in advance of the event, we do a reconnaissance to the site. We would start promoting the event on social media and traditional media, with the newspapers, with the morning breakfast shows on TV. We would have a pre-registration form for volunteers to start showing their interest so that we can then communicate with our volunteers as the plans take place. Normally we would do midday Saturday to midday Sunday. That doesn't have to be the case for all BioBlitzes, but that's what we generally end up deciding on for our events. But in any case, we always do 24 hours. And that includes surveying all night long for some of the groups. And then on Sunday, while some groups are still out there collecting data, we also have outreach displays at base camp where the public is invited to come and see those outreach displays. Even if they're not taking part as volunteers, they can see some of the specimens that we've collected. They can engage with other NGO displays and generally learn more about biodiversity. And we usually invite some of the local politicians or other VIPs to come and see more about Bioblitz on that Sunday event. We provide with the funding that we receive, and depending on how much funding an event might have, of course, would vary what you can provide, but we usually aim to provide snacks, refillable drinks. We're a zero single-use plastic event, so we always tell people to bring their own containers and cups, but we provide the hot drinks, we provide a hot dinner, and of course, washrooms and a camping area as well, all free of charge for the volunteers. At 11:30 a.m. on the Saturday, that's when we do a briefing, because we often have people who've never taken part before, even though we've been going for a long time, and help them to find their team leader and get organised ready at 12 o'clock to start doing the surveys. At that point, the teams head out to whichever location that particular team with their group, whether it's the birds, the mammals, the plants, might decide to go. And they keep surveying for that whole 24 hours. And then towards the end, the team leaders that will compile species lists and the highlights to pass on to us at the organising committee so that we can then announce that at about 1 o'clock on the Sunday to a crowd of volunteers, the public, and everybody who wants to find out how many species we've managed to find over the event. It actually takes us a bit longer to collate the real results because often the species total will rise quite significantly due to identifying things and sort of collating everything together, which is a bit of a rush on the Sunday. So we do that in the weeks after the event, and then we publish a report which has all of the details, including a full species list of what was found that anyone can access. We post that online. So I expect you can already see some of the benefits of a BioBlitz here, and these are some of the keywords that might pop out when you think, well, what's the purpose, or what are the good things about a BioBlitz in terms of this combination of community engagement and science and education. For me, are the things that come out as being the key benefits of BioBlitz. That all of these things can happen in one event, I think, is really special. So I've just divided some of the main impacts in my mind into a few headings. So thinking about scientific impact of BioBlitz. This can take the form of new species, and several events over the years, we have discovered new species to science through this intense surveying, where you get all of those experts and volunteers in one place. You're just more likely to find things. And Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean in general, I mean, as I said, it's under-researched, which means there's lots of opportunities for finding things that we either haven't seen very often or have never seen before. So in Charlottesville, there was a new anole that is new species, and because we had those experts there, they knew that and were able to document that. More commonly, but just as excitingly really, is we find records that have never been found for the country. They're not new to science, but they're new for Trinidad and Tobago, for example, in our case. At the Baku Bioblitz, there were 7 new moth records for Tobago that had never been recorded for Tobago before. And we think it's looking similar, if not more, for this year's Bioblitz too. We see new distribution, so species that we didn't realize were in that particular area. Our event, the BioBlitz reveals them and allows us to kind of better understand where species are found, whether that's because we haven't seen them there before through lack of study, or maybe in some cases they're actually expanding their range. But it means we get that data that we wouldn't have otherwise. And this has happened in a couple of cases for geckos in Guaya, where it's an introduced species of gecko that's not native to Trinidad, and we didn't realize that it was found in that area of the country. And our scientific impact can also be measured by how often BioBlitz data and BioBlitz reports get cited in other reports. So we've seen our data from different events over the years be used as evidence of the rich biodiversity of areas, which is really nice to see that highlights that, because often it's the only surveys that have been done for that area, even though it's not a strictly kind of scientific quantified search. In some cases, it's all there is, and it can provide an important starting point for those kind of surveys. And we know that in many cases, certainly in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, citizen science and the importance of understanding local biodiversity is central to many of the biodiversity targets and priorities. So it fits in very well with that. We see a great educational impact of Bioblitz. Secondary school environmental clubs, sixth formers with their teachers, homeschooling groups have all attended different Bioblitzes over the years. Even though they're at weekends, they come out and they want to get that first-hand experience. And we always get extremely positive feedback from these groups. We find our undergraduates get a really amazing experience by getting that outside the classroom, getting out there, meeting not just their lecturers, but other people with the passion for biology, for nature is really, really important, and hands-on training in some of the survey techniques that you might need depending on what you're interested in. So it's great work experience for future careers. And you can even, without too much effort, incorporate Bioblitz activities into the curriculum. Primarily biology, geography, environmental science, but other subjects as well could be definitely connected. The community impact of Bioblitz can be in the form of local communities that actually live in the area, getting involved and learning more about the biodiversity in the area where they're living. You can also think of the community of wildlife enthusiasts for the whole nation who's brought together for Bioblitz with this shared enthusiasm and shared purpose from different organizations with a similar mission. And that community that comes together once a year is just so nice to see, and it's nice to be a part of, because you see conversations, you have that mentorship, and this sort of sense of community that you get from this this thing we all have in common through Bioblitz. And then more recently, we've used social media more and more and over the years, it's kind of built up. So we now have a really great online community of people who, even if they don't come out to Bioblitz, share in the excitement of it taking place. And some of them then would also eventually manage to join. And related to that, we also see impact on individuals. And I've had many conversations over the years about how Bioblitz actually influenced individuals, their careers, connections that they've made. And I've just got a couple of examples here from regular Bioblitzers who have started Bioblitzing with us when they were, barely out of primary school, and now they lead groups. They're absolutely central to the event. Here we have Zach Ali, who talks about an environment where you can meet like-minded peers, and he's talking about how he sees many successful conservation projects coming out of the connections made during Bioblitz over the years, and that's really nice to hear. And then we have Saifuddin Mohammed, who I remember coming to Bioblitz as a young boy, and now he leads the HERP group, and he's one of our leading naturalists for the country, talking about meeting people with similar interests and shaping him into the naturalist that he is today. So these are just a couple of examples of these sort of testimonials from individuals who've Bioblitz has been such a big part of their life and given them the opportunity to forge their career, their interests through what it provides for them. At the end of each event, we produce this final report, which is more of a scientific account of what happened, which is available to all. We also, through the Field Naturalist Club, provide this quarterly bulletin edition where it's a more visual, descriptive, lots and lots of photos and more like story type reports about what happened with a bit more colour and interest. So each year we publish one of those. And then we also produce one of these posters each year, started by Mike Rutherford, and I'm trying my best to keep up and produce these every year, because these are really nice to then display at Bioblitzes, and we also donate them to the community centres and schools that were involved in that particular Bioblitz, just summarising the stats and what happened. And this is usually a 6x3 banner that you can hang at any display. So that's Bioblitz. I'd now like to move on to introducing the iNaturalist itself, for those of you who aren't already familiar. And perhaps now's a good time to introduce the poll, which I should be able to do myself. Okay, maybe I just need Sarai to help me to launch the poll, please. Thanks. If you could all just answer this so I get a feel for how many of you here today are already iNaturalist users and how many of you are not familiar. Or maybe you're familiar, but you've never actually registered for an account with iNaturalist.
So we have mostly everyone, yeah, the numbers are going up. So so far it says that 10 persons said yes and 7 persons said no.
Okay, yeah, I see that. So about a 60-40% split. So, okay, great. So many of you haven't, but quite a lot of you have. That's great to know. So some of you, what I'm about, the next couple of slides are going to be very familiar to you. And some of you, it might be new. And hopefully we might be able to convert those of you who aren't already on iNaturalist, convince you to sign up today. So I'm going to end the poll now. We're still at about, 55, 45, great. Thanks, Ray. I can share that too, just so everyone can see. Cool. So I'm going to move on to talk about iNaturalist, and then I'm going to join the two together to talk about how iNaturalist fits together with Bioblitz. So iNaturalist is an app, it's a social network, it's a database. It's a website, but it's also an app on your phone. So you can either engage with iNaturalist on your phone, or you can go online and see it on the browser. It's the same thing, the same account. Once you make an account, you can view it in those two different ways. Its aim is to engage, educate, and connect naturalists, and also generate useful data, which we'll talk about a bit more. And the idea is, if you're using iNaturalist, that you will record a species that you see as a photo on your phone, could be an audio file as well. You will then upload it to iNaturalist, where it gets shared with other people, not just people in your country, but people all around the world. It's a global network. And then you and others will then learn, because you will start learning about what it was that you saw. So you saw a caterpillar in your garden, but you have no idea what species that is. You just know it's a caterpillar. You put it on iNaturalist and you learn exactly what species that might be. And then next time you see that caterpillar, perhaps you'll recognize it straight away. But then that caterpillar and that identification of that caterpillar in that location becomes data that means and in time as well. I'm just going to show a very short video here, again, for those who aren't familiar at all with iNaturalist.
iNaturalist is a social network where anyone can record and share their photographs of living things. When you share a photograph on iNaturalist, it becomes more than just a picture. It becomes an observation. It's a record of an organism in a place at a time. Each observation is shared with a global community of naturalists, where it can be identified, discussed, and used to give us a greater understanding of life on Earth. Wherever you are, biodiversity is there too. Get out and observe it.
Great, that's just a little taster. So as I mentioned, it's all about taking those photographs, and when you see something, take a picture of it, upload it, add the metadata like when you saw it, where you saw it, which would happen automatically on the phone app, and then wait for those experts who are logging into iNaturalist as well to help you identify it. There's also a really good algorithm on the app which gives a pretty good guess at what they're seeing from the photo itself. And then the experts come in to verify that and refine it until you end up with, hopefully, a confident identification of the species. Now, the nice thing about iNaturalist is you can actually make a project on iNaturalist. So if you are just an ordinary user of iNaturalist, you upload your observations, you can see how many species you've seen, you can see what they are, you can look at them on a map, and that's great. And that's what most people would use iNaturalist for. And it's a nice way to then see a record of things you've seen and generally engage better with your biodiversity, whether you're on a hike in your garden or whatever. But if you're organizing an event like a Bioblitz, it's good to learn how you can use iNaturalist to make the most of that. So you can do something called making a project on iNaturalist. And here's an example of one of our iNaturalist projects from this year's event. You can name your project. You can add a description of it, which I've done here. You can set time boundaries, so you can add that 24 hours on for a Bioblitz, for example. You can also set the geographical boundaries by uploading a file with a polygon to show where you want the data to come from. And then you encourage all of your volunteers and participants to join the project. They have to have signed up to iNaturalist first, and then they have to just tick a box to join this project. Once they've done that, it means that during the Bioblitz, in that time and place, anything that those participants upload to the app will also feed into your project. So in one place on one web page, you can see all of the data for your Bioblitz that's been added, which is a really great tool when you're organizing a Bioblitz to have those data in one place. And I'll talk about some of the pluses to that just now. They don't need to do anything else. They just need to do their normal iNaturalist, which is using their phone to take photos. And then it will add to the project automatically and keep those statistics and those records for you. So what does iNaturalist bring to Bioblitz? I've talked about Bioblitz being successful in its own right in terms of those communities, but it also, using iNaturalist can make it even more engaging and successful. So iNaturalist encourages engagement because whether you are an expert or a complete novice at Bioblitz, your data, if you take a photo of something that no one else has taken a photo of, then you could be contributing to that list just as much as anyone else once you take that photo and put it up there. You don't necessarily need to know what it is. You need to upload it and then the rest happens. I'm going to go through these in a bit more detail now, but these are the 6 different categories I feel that iNaturalist contributes to when it comes to Bioblitz. Access to a global network, flexibility to have virtual events, opportunity for collaborations, summary stats, and becoming useful data for others to access. So now I'm just going to go through these one by one. So as I mentioned, it encourages engagement because anyone can join. It's free and it's pretty easy to use. It's been well tested. It's now this iNaturalist has been going for a long time, and so they've ironed out some of the less user-friendly parts, and now it's really a nice app to use. You don't need any experience. Students absolutely love using their phones, and you're saying, yes, please do use your phone. So they're excited that they have a legitimate use for social media. The nice thing is that everyone can see each other's data in real time on the project, as well as their own totals. So you can see those numbers rising, which really adds to the engagement and excitement over the weekend. Even if you're not there, you can still see that live online. I mentioned about these experts. Well, iNaturalist gives you access to these global network of experts, especially in places like where we are in the Caribbean. You're not going to have an expert based locally for every single taxa. It's just not going to happen, especially for the invertebrates where there are so many diverse taxa. To have somebody who knows all the species for each of those is just very unlikely. But globally, we do have those experts, and many of them engage with iNaturalist. So by uploading, say, a beetle to iNaturalist, some coleopterist, some beetle expert in the US or somewhere else in the world will see that observation and can help you identify it from afar. This also leads to knowledge sharing between those enthusiasts and experts, and eventually the enthusiasts become experts by gradually learning about the things they're seeing regularly, and next time they actually can upload it with a species identification in the first instance, rather than waiting for the experts to do that for them. The AI algorithm is pretty good. When you upload the photo, sometimes it's really quite amazing how accurate it can be, although sometimes you have to use your common sense and correct it, but it's a good start. You can see here, this is a screenshot from the project from Maracas, where we had 96 observers, so people uploading to iNaturalist. We had over 200 identifiers, and many of those were based all around the world, not locally, who were logging in and helping their project and helping the observers to work out what they had seen. So it's really important. People spend a lot of time and effort just out of pure passion and enthusiasm for their field of expertise in order to help everybody to make their data better. It gives you, using iNaturalist for a Bioblitz gives the flexibility to host virtual events, and you can both integrate it into the in-person events and have iNaturalist happening in parallel with everything else, or, as was the case during the pandemic, you have the option to make the event virtual if you really can't do an in-person event. And this is what we did in 2020, 2021, and 2023, when we really didn't want to pause and break our record of annual Bioblitzes. So we had to think creatively. And luckily, many of us already used iNaturalist to some extent. So we realized we could apply this, encourage more people to join, and turn this limitation of lockdown into an opportunity. And it really was, I think we were all surprised by how successful it was. It meant that we had a much wider reach for the event than we ever had before, because there were people who maybe they weren't passionate about nature enough to travel all the way down to Guayari for a weekend and camp, but they were interested enough to join the project and survey the biodiversity of that backyard. And so we reached people who then maybe, became nature enthusiasts, because this kind of encouraged them and gave them a taste of what it's like to use iNaturalist and to learn more about biodiversity. Because in 2020, we asked people just to go into their backyards because we were under quite strict restrictions at the time, we got some nice insights into urban biodiversity and the species we were finding in our backyard. And we were all amazed by the just the number of species we were finding even in the urban environment. It was really exciting to see, and all of us were in our separate gardens, even the organising committee in our separate places, watching all of these observations come in, which was really amazing. And of course, certainly myself, even as a biologist, found that during the pandemic, I became more connected with the nature in my garden because I hadn't got anywhere else to go. And so I feel like this event also, we take for granted what we see in our own gardens because we see it every day, and sometimes we don't think twice about, oh, it's a gecko, it's a bird, it's a butterfly. And I feel like this event allowed people to appreciate the nuances of what was found in their garden, the specific species they're seeing. And then perhaps afterwards, they would then notice that more and kind of open your eyes to what's really there, which is a surprising amount, especially here in the tropics where, biodiversity is high everywhere, not just in the forests and in the sea. Similarly, in 2022, we saw the opportunity to expand these virtual bioblitzes for international collaboration, and using projects on iNaturalist allowed us to do this. So here we engaged with multiple countries, in this case, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, and Barbados, in order to have this collaborative project. So we all did the bioblitz, sort of the same backyard bioblitz that we'd done in 2020, but we did it concurrently in the 3 islands, engaging naturalists, students, volunteers in all 3 islands into the same project so we could see what was coming in over that 24 hours. And it was a great way to connect with our fellow naturalists and colleagues over in these islands. And it's something we should do again. I think maybe this time spreading it even further around the Caribbean, including as many islands and countries as are interested. Now that project feature is great because it gives you a dynamic stats board showing you the results, which is great for sharing the results and compiling the results. You can also allow a competitive element where you could offer prizes for the most observations or the most species. You have to be a little cautious about this because you don't want to flood iNaturalists with kind of poor quality observations just because somebody wants to win the prize. But you can adjust it so that it's not a too high value prize, like a wildlife guide, for example. And because it gives you this nice sort of leaderboard, you can identify who has won the prizes. So here you can see those who contributed the most to this bioblitz, and it gives you the rankings for most observations, most species, and then it also gives you the species top 5 or top 6 here as well. You can also see other stats like the number of species and how it breaks down among the taxa. So iNaturalist produces these nice graphics for you, so you don't have to, and that's great if you're then doing a presentation like I am today, but also if you just want to share that with anyone who's logging into the project, etc.
Hi, Amy, sorry, just to interrupt you real quick. There was some marks on your screen and that was just someone using the whiteboard by accident, but it's not your presentation. You could go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah,
I
I've
don't
just
know if you were
cleared them.
seeing them. Yeah.
I was, but yeah, I think I've now cleared them, although now I don't know. Yep, great. Thank you. So here's another example of what you can see on iNaturalist in terms of summary stats. You can do this for any project. You can see the ranked species that are seen the most, ranked in order of how many observations for that project. So you can see for this backyard Bioblitz in 2020, we had more than 6,500 observations of 1,395 species, and then you can see what was seen the most. So here we had the bronze anole, which is an introduced species in Trinidad and Tobago, at leading the way with 69 observations, followed by the cane toad with 54, etc. So this was a backyard Bioblitz, so these aren't surprising. These were the most common species seen in people's gardens over that weekend. But it compiles that for you in a nice visual way, which I really like. And then as a scientist, what I find, even more brilliant about using iNaturalist in Bioblitz is the data that goes onto iNaturalist when you upload your photos. It actually becomes useful data beyond data that we're just interacting with and viewing. Anyone can view it, anyone in the world. They can download that data. They can view it on a map. If someone later is interested in the distribution of a particular species, that Bioblitz data will be there as part of that for them to learn more about the distribution of that species. And it's completely open access, so anybody can see that. The only caveat is if you take photos, upload observations of endangered species, they're automatically obscured there in terms of their exact location, just for protection. But otherwise, those data are available to all. And even better than that, those observations that get successfully identified to a species level get automatically added onto GBIF, which is a global biodiversity database that is also completely open access. And this is commonly used by scientists, policymakers, educators all over the world. It's the biggest database of biodiversity information in the world. So iNaturalist is one of the organizations that feeds data into GBIF, contributing to really our knowledge of biodiversity globally. And people can then do huge analyses looking at global patterns, as well as honing in on particular species of interest using that GBIF data. And just to give you a feeling for the extent of GBIF, there are 3 billion data points on GBIF from different sources, some of them from surveys, some of them from museum specimens, but an awful lot of it is coming from citizen science, iNaturalist, and also from eBird, which is kind of the bird equivalent of iNaturalist. You can still put birds on iNaturalist, but eBird is the sort of special one for birds. So the fact that it's contributing to this amazing network of data that is then allowing us to do really important analyses when it comes to biodiversity data, I think is really amazing. And the fact that iNaturalist being used in Bioblitz means that that data is not just coming from the academics in the universities or the professional researchers, it is being contributed by anyone and everyone with an interest and a passion for doing it, regardless of their experience and expertise. So it really feels like if you're taking part in Bioblitz, you are making a difference to this. You are contributing to filling that gap, which is especially important in places like the Caribbean. So hopefully I have successfully convinced you that Bioblitz is a citizen science event that we can engage communities and generate data. Hopefully I've convinced you to sign up to iNaturalist, those 40% of you who haven't done already, and convinced you that it's a great addition. And I just wanted to end the last couple of minutes. I won't take too long over this because I know we'd like to leave some time for questions, but giving you a sneak preview into the final results from Maracas, which took place in September this year. So this is where the Maracas Bioblitz took place. As usual, a 5-kilometre radius with a base camp at the community centre. Lovely range of habitats within this area, which is why we chose it, especially because it had unique habitats like the elfin forest. It was also close to 2 very popular beaches, Maracas and Las Cuevas, which meant we knew we'd get more people coming from the public, which we always appreciate to come to the outreach part of the event especially. This year we made a special effort to engage with local schools ahead of time, and we used a combination of iNaturalist project plus pen and paper lists for those who weren't using iNaturalist. We brought the two together to get our final species lists. And this is a close-up of exactly where our area was. So this was an article in last weekend's UE Today, which you can look up online to summarize what we found. But that had the that didn't have the final numbers in because this was written and submitted before we did the final totals. So this is the Marcus project on iNaturalist. But again, as I said, we used a combination. So this species of 851 is not the final total. So I'm just taking you through the different taxa. As I said, for the outreach, we visited local schools, we trained students in iNaturalist, we provided transport. The mammals, 8 different bats. The highlight, though, although we always get excited about bats because they're diverse and amazing, was the neotropical river otter that a volunteer spotted really near to base camp, which was incredible. No photo, but a definite sighting. So overall, 14 for the mammals, which isn't the biggest total for any taxa, but for the mammals, it's very respectable. So that was great. Then we had the birds. They did all sorts of different surveys this year, as well as the normal birding groups with their binoculars and their scopes and their big cameras. We had one team go to Lavash Cave to find the oil birds in a boat and then swim into the cave to catch the oil birds. We also had bird banding efforts, which not only meant that we got data from those birds, but we also were able to show volunteers and community members those birds up close, which is a really amazing outreach activity to do to really excite especially young people in their biodiversity. And then Dr. Mark Hume had put audio recorders at the top of Altitude, so we got to hear some of those high elevation bird species, which also counted for the list. So 156 species of bird, which is really incredible, a really great total for the birds. The aquatic species, they did all kinds of different things and got 83 species in total. The bugs had a record year, and this was through extra effort from people like Raina Deo, especially, who went out to find moths, put up light traps, which we've never really done to such a big extent before. And we ended up with 603 bugs, so nearly as many bugs as we found at other BioBlitz in total for all species, which is amazing. So that's going to be a tough one to match again, but I'm sure they're up to the challenge there. And as I said, bugs is where we often get new records and sometimes even new species. It just takes a while before we know whether something's a new species, but we feel quite positive that there's going to be some new species coming out of some of these bug surveys. For the reptiles and amphibians, 40. This included the golden tree frog and the luminous lizard, which are exciting species that are only found at high elevation, so that was super exciting. The fungi, 64 species, a great total from the fungi group. They also did some brilliant outreach work. Then the plants, they got the highest total that they've ever got for any BioBlitz at 481. Normally they're around the 200, 300 mark, so that was incredible. And then some years, not every year, we have microbes, and this is where we collect samples ahead of time, process them in the lab here at UWE, see what grows in those Petri dishes, and add microbes to make sure we're covering all taxa. So this year we found at least 20 microbes from taking sand from the beaches on the north coast and from the soil at the top of El Takuch. So 20 microbes have been identified in total from those samples. So in summary, we had 250 volunteers, which is another record, more than 100 visitors to base camp on the Sunday, and then all of those totals that I just mentioned, adding up, for those of you who didn't add up as I went, 1,462 species, which is by far our biggest yet, absolutely record-breaking in many ways. And so we can add that number to our total for BioBlitzes so far. I'd like to end by prompting you to think about whether iNaturalist is a tool for you as an individual, or maybe even for you in your professional role or in your volunteer role in an organization to help engage communities. Maybe there are particular species or habitats that might be particularly in need of that kind of data. And you could ask whether you want to organize a BioBlitz if there's not already one where you live. So thank you very much to all of these people for various contributions, both to this presentation, but also to BioBlitz success over the years. And thanks for listening today. You can keep up with us on social media, and you can email this address if you want any more information on how we do BioBlitz or getting involved in the Trinidad BioBlitz, etc. So thanks very much for asking me to give this talk today, Nikita. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Based on the responses, the little clapping hands that I could see, I think everyone really enjoyed this presentation. We learned a lot. I was one of the visitors to base camp on Sunday, but I'm hoping that next year I could perhaps be part of the survey itself. And I think that everyone here who wasn't part of the surveys is also thinking the same thing, that let's see where the location is next year and how we could all join in, because Sounds really amazing. I do have a couple questions. I see one in the chat, and also I'd encourage if you all have any questions, you could pop them into the chat now. So Tanya did ask that when did the Field Naturalist Club start using iNaturalist for Bioblitz?
Oh, great question. We've certainly been using it. We've certainly been making a project since at least 2017, I would say. Okay, Mike, thank you. He can answer this question for me.
Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, so I was just looking back. I actually used iNaturalist in 2012 for Tucker Valley, but that was just my own personal additions. At that point, I hadn't rolled it out. I tried to do it again in 2015, but there wasn't really any sort of no one else was using it at that point in big enough numbers. So the first one that really sort of kicked off, I think, was about Toco 2018.
Okay.
Was the first one that had sort of a big impact. I was used by quite a range of people.
And I think what we found, what we certainly found anecdotally, was that when we did the virtual BioBlitzes, this was a turning point because everyone had to join iNaturalist to take part in those, which then meant when we returned to in-person events, it was much easier to have everyone on board for doing it at the in-person events as well. And we generally saw a pattern where the number of iNaturalist observations for the country went up after those virtual BioBlitzes because it was a way of just getting people to use the app all the time. It's hard to dissect because I think iNaturalist has become more popular over that time as well. But I feel that it sort of made a little step up in how many people were actually uploading things.
Thank you for jumping in there. I don't see any other questions in the chat, really just praise for how much people enjoyed this presentation. I do have a question myself. I liked that you mentioned the use of audio recordings as well for, I think you said the birds as well as reptiles.
As well. Yeah, frogs and birds are
So maybe, I don't know if I missed it, but is it that iNaturalist could also tackle audio recordings as a means of identification?
You can definitely upload them as observations, and experts can then log in and listen to them and help identify them. I'm not sure whether there's an algorithm for them though, Mike. Do you know that?
I don't think so.
No, there's not the automatic identification, but you do get the manual identifications, and it does count as an observation, even if you don't have a photo, but you do have an audio recording, that can still be uploaded and identified.
Right. So it could complement the other sources of data, which I think is very interesting, particularly for those species that can be identifiable via audio recordings. So, and then just watching the time, but one more quick, perhaps, comment from me. I also like that it could be used to sort of indicate not just endangered species, but also invasive species as well. Yes. Because it's, it does sort of track reports of them as well as the geographic location. So that's another, I think, useful tool for those who work in the field of invasive alien species.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it has the timestamp and it has the geography and the time. So you can really plot those kind of spreads. Yeah.
Oh, I think quick question in the chat now. I feel like this person's asking for a little sneak peek that I'm not sure if you're able to give, but any updates on next year's location?
I'm gonna stay a little quiet on that, but we are waiting the response to which we're applying for the funding now, so it's a little bit dependent on whether we get our funding where we go. But if you follow the social media on Facebook and Instagram, then you'll be the first to find out once it's confirmed.
Gotta keep stay tuned, guys. Okay, so Amy, thank you so much. I want to share my poll now, please. So before you all run away, whilst I'm saying thank you, I will just ask. Yeah, I'm just gonna share. Yes, please. I'm gonna share a QR code. Yeah, let me pull this up. I'm gonna share a QR code. So for those of you who can quickly just open this Menti poll and please do this very short, I believe it's like 3 questions, maybe 4, survey. And that's really because we are at our 3rd webinar for the series, and we just want to get some feedback on for the overall project itself. And could you also drop the code in the chats for those who may just want to click it versus using the QR code. So yeah, whilst you're doing that, I'll just say my thank yous. Of course, huge thank you to Dr. Deacon and for all the participants who joined us today. I really think it was an exceptional webinar. We learned a lot. We saw lots of cool pictures, and I think everyone's excited for next year, and figuring out how we could all be part of it. Hopefully the QR code is working for you guys. Yeah, okay, great. So I'm just asking if y'all could please do these feedback questions for us. Of course, thank you to our sponsors. This project is sponsored by the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, with Canary as the implementing body for this region. And you'll may be hearing from me in the future for any other upcoming opportunities. But yeah, huge thanks to Dr. Amy. We really appreciate it. And that's it for today, guys. So once you finish doing the poll, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.